All right, welcome back to the big show, Overtime. Keeping it real with film going overtime. This is episode 443. We ran out of time, didn't get a chance to talk about Sidney Poitier, and I definitely wanted to do that because he's a man that I respect a great deal. I'm joined by Charles Kirkland Jr. and Wilson Morales. But as we start today, let me just essentially read this out to you. Born today, 94 years ago, Sidney Poitier is a Bahamian American retired actor, film director, and ambassador. In 1964, Poitier won the Academy Award for Best Actor, his second nomination for Lilies of the Field, becoming the first Black male and Afro-Bahamian actor to win that award. He is currently the oldest living and earliest surviving Best Actor Academy Award winner. And from 1997 to 2007, he served as the Bahamian ambassador to Japan. Now, for me, what is not listed on there is the importance that Sidney Poitier has throughout the entire industry. In 1950, his debut film, No Way Out, he starred along with very young Richard Widmark. He became the first Black leading man in motion picture in studio modern era, not counting, because people, before you started hitting me about Paul Robeson and Rex Ingram and all the other folks, no, Sidney Poitier was a studio star in 1950, and his career went 50 years before he finally retired. Poitier is the gold standard. I mean, the platinum standard. Without him, you don't have Howard Rollins, you don't have Morgan Freeman, you don't have Denzel Washington, you don't have any of these actors. And he also broke through not just for Black actors, but for minority actors. So if you think about Rita Moreno and women in the industry, Sidney Poitier, to me, is the foundation, and that's what he represents. And that's why I wanted to do something special for him. So before we get into our top 5 Poitier movies, I'll start with Charles Kirkland. What does Sidney Poitier's presence as an actor, as an activist, as a producer, a director, what does he mean to you?
Well, to me, there's a podcast out there about Denzel Washington being the greatest actor of all time, period, right? But I say if it wasn't for Sidney Poitier, there wouldn't be Denzel Washington. If it wasn't for Sidney Poitier, we'd have what we talked about Rada Blank in the last episode. Sidney Poitier has set the standard, regally set the standard for acting as far as minorities. I want to say African Americans, but he was so far across the line of not just African Americans, but like you said, Caribbean Americans, Latin Americans, any minority you can think of. Sidney Poitier had a hand in it, and I think a lot of the things that I experienced in movies, going through movies with my mother, and this was my mother's favorite actor of all time. Sidney Poitier could do no wrong. Anything that he did, she was all a fan of. Even the last movie I think we ever watched him do was Sneakers, where he was in a cast of 100 of others, not much of a big role, but she loved that film because it was Sidney Poitier, and there was nothing that he done that was wrong. There was nothing that he could do that was wrong. And again, we owe so much to him just for what he's contributed to the community. So I'm happy to hear that he's made 94 years, and I'm thankful for whatever he's done, everything that he's done.
Now, before we get to Wilson, let me just also add, among his many firsts, is in 1980, Sidney Poitier directed Stir Crazy. Stir Crazy, with Sidney Poitier as director, became the first Black man to direct a $100 million Hollywood movie. He doesn't get enough credit for that, because that's not like that happens all the time. And that was in 1980. Wilson Morales, talk to me, because there's going to come a day, Wilson, that you're going to have to talk about the life and legacy of this man. And I'm glad that we're doing this while he is still with us, because we recently lost Cicely Tyson. Sidney Poitier, man, I talked to this guy for 45 minutes one time by accident because I was calling his office because I was researching a book that I wanted to write. And he answered the phone and talked to me. And I tell people to this day, that's the only first and only time I ever had three emotions simultaneously for almost an hour, that I wanted to scream because I was so excited. I wanted to cry because of what he means to me. And I was just shocked. Like, I'm talking to Sidney Poitier. Wilson Morales, what does Sidney Poitier represent to you, a person who runs a site that talks about exclusively Black film and television?
Well, I'm way younger than you guys, and so I'm part of that millennial group. I'm just
Oh, rub it in. Rub it in.
Now, here's the thing. Obviously, me running Black film and TV is a testament, goes back. He is the root, that started it all. Like, he's the reason. He opened the doors for everybody, Black folks, male and female. You think about, like, and there were others around his time period, but but for whatever reason, Hollywood, chose him to be the guy.
Correct.
And he said, you know what? So be it. If you're gonna choose me to be the guy, I'm gonna keep opening these doors so that the next guy can come in. And then the next woman can come in. However long it may be, so long as I'm around and since I'm still alive, I'm gonna tell you that story. And so I'm sure there are other leading men that came out. Then Denzel came in. And so Hollywood's like, okay, but even Denzel knows how to give his props. When Denzel won his Oscar, it was the same night Sidney got his award as well. He was like, I'm still chasing you, Sidney. At the end of the day, it's like, Sidney, Denzel may have had more films, more accolades, but Sidney, you can't forget about who led the wave. That's always the most important thing, what Sidney did. With the films he did, you can't think of any buffoonery that he did. Every now and then, maybe actors you see a film like, what, is he doing it for the check or whatever? But no, I think when you look at Sidney Poitier's movies at that time, they were meaningful, because we weren't getting that many. So he wasn't just saying yes to anything, and I'm sure you didn't do everything for the money, obviously we're all gonna be talking about the 5 films we know of, and I'm sure there are people out there that just know him from some other stuff that they knew of him before the fame, and if they didn't see enough movies out there at the time to know that Sidney was the guy. At the end of the day, it's like, we know of Denzel because Denzel is a big marketing name, but there are other names out there currently now that are good in their own right, in their own field. Like there's probably an actor there that does really well on the independent level. Like, I'll take for an example, Rob Morgan. It's like, he's not a big name that you would see in Hollywood movies, but for a lot of people, he's been on the independent circuit for a long time, and now he's getting his shine on some bigger screen. I'm sure Sidney did the same thing, like Sidney at that time, like, hey, you needed that face. It's like, oh, there's one of us there,
Right.
And so as long as the door was open, hey, Sidney, and he was at the time when it was the 60s, Hank Aaron, other people breaking barriers,
Yeah.
So, he falls right in there.
All right. Well, for my friends, I just put something in the chat room for you guys. So there's an article in the Wrap today that they have the 10 essential Sidney Poitier movies, from Black Boy Jungle to Serve with Love to Serve with Love. I decided to go in a different direction with my Poitier love. Like, I'm going to take one of the films off that list, but I have 4 other ones that mean something to me. So I'm going to break them down really quick for you and go first. First on my list, which I think is his greatest performance ever. He won the Oscar 2 years later for a movie that I don't think that much of. And I've been honest that I hate Lilies of the Field. You build the chapel, I build the chapel. Yeah. The movie he should have won an Oscar for was Raisin in the Sun, playing Walter Lee Younger. Poitier is fantastic in this film. This film is about an everyman who works as a chauffeur, but he aspires to be much more. But he is living in a time where the opportunities for Black men are limited. You see the frustration that he's living in a house like a tenement with his mama, his wife, his child who has to sleep on the couch. His sister is living there. And of course, the whole plot is that their father has died, and the insurance check is coming for $10,000. And they all think that this check is going to lead to a better life. Walter Lee wants to do something with the money. You need to watch the film. He is riveting in this film. So that was my first pick for my personal 5 favorites. We're not saying his top 5 films, my favorite 5 Sidney Poitier films. Number 2 is his directorial debut from 1972, Buck and the Preacher. Him and his best friend Harry Belafonte, along with Ruby Dee once again. He plays a guy who helps Black families as they're trying to settle in the Old West. Harry Belafonte, of course, plays a charlatan who pretends he's a preacher. The two of them have to get together along with his wife, Ruby Dee, in it. This film meant a lot to me because I saw it when I was a little kid in theaters, and I was like, man, I don't know who this Black dude is, but man, he's got some swag and he's mad cool. Love Sidney Poitier, man. This is what I'm saying. And I'm 7 or 8, man. I don't know who Sidney Poitier is, man. Come on,
you saw it in the theaters?
Probably I didn't see it in the theater. Maybe it was 72. Maybe I was 8 or 9. It felt like I saw it. So I saw it on television. Really, you gonna put me on blast, Charles? I saw it much later. The other film, this is one that I want Wilson to watch from 1971. It's called Brother John. Brother John is a story where he plays a character by the name of John Kane, who grew up in a small southern town in Alabama, left, but he always shows up right after somebody in the town has died who's close to him. And there's a doctor who delivered him who starts to put 2 and 2 together to figure out, man, there's something real special about this Black dude who grew up in Alabama, speaks 6 languages, knows all this stuff. You need to watch Brother John. It doesn't come on television often, but when it comes on TCM again, I'm gonna put that on blast. That is one of his best performances in that film, in a film that a lot of people have never seen before. My 4th film, I'm going back to 1961. Paul Newman, Sidney Poitier, Joanne Woodward, and Diane Carroll, and Paris Blues. Again, Poitier plays a jazz musician who is in a band with Newman. Sick of the racism in America, he now lives abroad. Carroll and Woodward are 2 American tourists that start dating these jazz musicians, and she's giving him speeches talking about Diane Carroll all through the movie. You need to come back to America. Man, I don't want to be in America. America's racist. We need to fight this racism together. No, I'm good. You do you, I'm gonna do me. Really good performances, good dialogue. And that movie is 60 years old and is still relevant today. Paris Blues is also notable because both of them, we find out later, were having affairs with each other that led to their own brief love affair. So Paris Blues, you need to check that out. And last but not least, and thank you, Charles, I stole this from you, Uptown Saturday Night, Sidney Poitier, Bill Cosby, a host of others. Poitier buys a winning lottery ticket, has it in his wallet. He goes to Madame Zenobia's club and he gets his lottery ticket stolen. And it's all the hijinks of how he gets his ticket back. So those are my 5 favorite Poitier movies. Wilson is still studying. So Charles Kirkland, you up. What's your favorite 5 and break it down, brother?
I don't think I'm gonna go in order, but I'll give you my 5. Of course, you stole my. I should never have talked with you about it because you know on it. But Uptown Saturday Night, it started off the whole trilogy with him and Bill Cosby. He also directed the film. And you talk about Paula Kelly's work in the film, man. That movie is a classic. It has to be seen. It's one of those ones that I made all my family members sit down and see with me, along with Buck and the Preacher, which is also on my list.
I saw Uptown Saturday Night in the theater. For sure, I know that one. I saw that. I did see that in the theater. That was fun. But go ahead. Buck and the Preacher's on your list?
Huh? Say that again? Uptown Saturday Night. I wish I could put the whole trilogy in there as one film. You know, some people cheat and do those things, but when you talk about Uptown Saturday Night, you also talk about Let's Do It Again. You also talk about A Piece of the Action. So those three movies, they seem like they're all one for me. They're just comedy and hilarious fun. I just every time they're on, I stop wherever I am and I have to sit down and watch it. Buck and the Preacher, of course, that's on my list. That's the second film of the first film that he directed. You mentioned it before. The civil rights area. There's another movie that I love that goes along with it called Man and Boy that Bill Cosby did, but this one where he's leading these settlers and he's got to figure out how to avoid these Confederates who are trying to send them back home instead of allowing them to
back into slavery. You talking about back home, back into slavery? Yes,
back home into slavery instead of going back out west to set up their own lives. It's a great film. Harry Belafonte is almost unrecognizable as the preacher character, but it's a lot of fun as well.
What's number three?
Number three, The Defiant Ones, for me is a classic picture. Him and Tony Curtis as two criminals who are chained together, and they got to figure out they've escaped. They got to figure out how to survive. And Tony Curtis is just racist as can be. And
I didn't put that one on my list because all the black folks are still mad that Sidney could have got away and he had to come back and get Tony Curtis. I was like, man, let that dude go, man. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry. Go.
We're in a time of uniting, not dividing. So for me, I enjoyed the movie. Working at another trilogy of movies that he did was Virgil Tibbs movie. So I had in the Heat of the Night on my list. Again, groundbreaking film where he slapped
that white man. That was huge.
It was huge back in the day to see a black man strike a white man in a movie.
He looked at the white guy. The white guy was like, Rod Steiger was like.
Oh man. And so to finish it up, I think They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. I also put that on my list as one of my favorite ones.
So those are your five?
That's my five.
So you had the Defiant Ones.
I was close to saying A Warm December because that's a beautiful picture, but I picked the They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. So that's Uptown Saturday Night, Buck and the Preacher, The Defiant Ones, In the Heat of the Night, and They Call Me Mr. Tibbs.
Man, this is the moment I've been waiting for right here. Black film and TV. Wilson Morales, man, I want to hear this. Go ahead, Wilson. What's your 548 movies?
Number one is Shoot to Kill. No. Like I said before, you guys were around when Sidney, like I watched Sidney Poitier movies after the fact, and so they have a different meaning. Nevertheless, but definitely I was. I don't know if I could say five, like ranking them like that, but I would definitely throw in Raisin in the Sun. Obviously, I saw it on Broadway. I saw it on the film. It's the film everybody wants to do. It's the play everybody wants to do, because of who played it first. Sidney Poitier, family man trying to do what he can to keep his family alive. Keep his family going in the midst of racism. I'm not going to get all long-winded like you guys did in terms of breaking down the story. I'm like, hey, go to Google, do that. I'm like, number two, They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. No, In the Heat of the Night. In the Heat of the Night, because, you weren't getting that many films back then where you had a black law enforcement officer who basically did what he had to do and fought racism head to head, and fought Rod Steiger, back then. This was the 60s, you definitely did not have that then. I would then have The Defiant Ones, because I remember watching that on TV, and and granted, you said what you said to him about the end, but it's like, here are these two guys, and when you just have a two character movie, it's just those two on screen, and that's like a play itself. It's like, hey, this is Sidney and Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis in a way was like the minor league compared to Sidney Poitier. I have that. Guess who's coming to dinner? When you start thinking about the movies he's done, and look at that caliber: Katharine Hepburn, Sidney Poitier, Trent Spacey. It's almost like saying Denzel, Meryl Streep, in a way you had that and say like the Manchurian Candidate, totally different. Start saying Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, Sidney Poitier. I'm in there. It's like it's hard to find those caliber of people right now. So you have, and obviously what that meant, and I'm sure a lot of people had to go through that in terms of like a white girl bringing her black boyfriend home, going through that stuff. And just when you thought he reinvented himself, Uptown Saturday Night. It's like you wonder, like, what can Sidney not do? And he changed the game with this comedy film. He changed, he's like, he changed the game. It's like, oh, him and Bill Cosby. Now, granted, Sidney was the straight one. You have Bill Cosby, but still, to know that Sidney Poitier can still come out there and bring you in there. The only thing he had not done, unless you guys can tell me, is a straight up horror film or a film where Sidney played the villain.
No,
but everything else.
I don't remember that. And I can't remember. I think he made. I can't remember the title of it. It was either 1966, where he was a captain on a ship. I want to say something, the Long Ships. He might have played a villain in that, but Poitier. I mean, it's funny. Wilson's laughing, about, you guys are older than me. I taught Sidney Poitier's career for the semester. Like it, I was an adjunct.
I have one more.
Go ahead. You got one more. Go ahead.
The last one is stir crazy, only because he directed it, and it was the first one that made $100 million. And that itself, it's sort of like when you start thinking about, we only have in the history of cinema less than 15 blacks directors who've had 100 grossing million films. You've had 2 or 3 of them that have done it 2 or 3 times, but the first one is always the most important one. And to know that it was Sidney and not some guy, like, for example, you've got Clark Johnson in that group who did SWAT, but most people don't know Clark Johnson, but everybody knows Sidney. It's important. It's like when you're the first, and it's the first that you know of. Like, we're still waiting to see who's going to be the first black director to win the Oscar. We've been up to the plate, but still, you wonder, like, is it going to be somebody that we all know that, like, he should be the first? Or is it somebody who's just had the benefit of having a good film that particular year, but it's like a rookie? At the end of the day, when Jordan Peele came out with Get Out, he could have been the first. And it was like on his first time at the plate. But that would be a heavy burden on him, because now he'd have to lead the mantle forever and ever. Sidney currently did that, and he didn't have to try. It's like it just happened, and he did it with a comedy film. So, like, he always did something different. And as long as he's still alive, you never know. Obviously, him, James Earl Jones, they no longer need to be seen to do work. You've done enough. You've paved the way. Obviously, we've lost Cicely Tyson at the age of 96. So to know that Sidney's still alive at 94, let's give him his props. It's like he's still doing his thing. This is a day we still have to remember. Let's not talk about them. And it's good that we're doing this now, so then we're not doing it when he dies. Because then you can always go back to this. Because he's not doing any more films.
No.
It's like, it's like, no. It's like the latter half of the 90s, it's like he did the film with Bruce Willis, then he did the film with Robert Redford, Sneakers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like he was still participating in some of these movies, but like, yeah, I wish he could have done a film with Denzel.
Yeah, I wish that as well, but I think you got to remember, man, and it's very interesting you would say that, because he was winding down. He was still doing movies in the 80s. Denzel hadn't become Denzel. Denzel wouldn't become, quote unquote, Denzel until around 89, 90. So by that time, Poitier, was wrapping up after 40 years, man. I mean, it was, he wasn't really taking, I think he officially retired like around 2000, but he wasn't really working a lot. But you're right. It would have been great to have gotten him in a film with Sidney and, with Denzel. And you've heard Denzel tell the story of meeting Sidney, just literally stalking him in a bookshop one day. I'm Denzel Washington, Mr. Poitier. I want
You
to do
get that
what
now. Like I said, you're usually getting somebody looking to try to be the next Will Smith, the next Denzel. Find an actor who's putting in enough work out there. There's an actress trying to be the next Viola, the next Octavia Spencer in terms of like, opening the doors. Obviously, who wants to be the next Ava? I don't think anybody should try to be the next also. Just be you. Set your own path. Things come in time. At the end of the day, when Sidney was at his prime, those around that time period admired him, damn, but they weren't looking at him like he was the guy. Maybe he was during that time period because we didn't have that many people in the field as we do now. We do now.
I mean, Sidney Poitier to me, man, you heard me say it at the onset. I'm not going to repeat it, that he means everything to me because, the image of Black men, was so few and far in between in the 1950s and the 1960s on the big screen of how they were writing and what they would let us do. And Sidney Poitier, man, we didn't even talk about movies like Edge of the City with him and John and Cassavetes. That was a really important film because Poitier would play in films where he was not the secondary guy. You watch Black Boy Jungle, it's Glenn Ford and Sidney Poitier, but Sidney Poitier is a student in the class, but he's the leader of the class who the teacher tries to bond with to try to get everybody else in line. I mean, so he played roles of significance from day one. So he was never the background guy. He's the star. And that's what's so different and significant about what Poitier represents. There were plenty of Black guys that made movies. You heard me say Robinson, Ingram. We had the race movies. There were tons of Black guys that we saw. But like as Wilson said correctly, Harry Belafonte was there, Sidney Poitier was there. The famous story is that a Hollywood agent came to a play that both of them were there. And Belafonte was the lead. Poitier was the understudy. Belafonte was sick that night. Poitier played Belafonte's role. The agent saw him and went, that's the guy. So the fact that those two are still best friends to this day talks to you about not just their level of brotherhood, but it also talks to you about opportunity and how Poitier took that opportunity and ran with it. Wilson Morales, you had your finger up.
No, I'm just saying before I have to wrap up pretty soon. It's just, you got a warm December. He's at the end of the day, it's like, I don't think enough of Sidney Poitier's movies are being played. It's like, I wish Netflix can buy a lot of those movies so they can play them on rotation every now and then because, they're scattered throughout different channels, AMC, Showtime here and there. But, I think if Netflix were to buy a few of those movies, you can play them because it's like you got a lot of films that like everybody's got Netflix now. So it's like you can sit there and it's all just find it, as opposed to like going through HBO or any of the other channels and waiting for it to come on. Not everybody's gonna go to Amazon and look for those films. Like, hey, if you're at the front of Netflix, you can choose to watch those movies.
Yeah, man. I just saw before you let you go, man. Oh, go ahead, Charles.
Well, I was going to say a lot of these films are on Amazon. If you go to Amazon Prime, you can find a lot of them. But yeah, it'd be a great service if they were someplace more local.
And also, I recommend The Organization. I mean, so I've seen almost all his movies, so I'm just like, that's my guy. I mean, but Brother John, if you find, matter of fact, next time I find Brother John, I'm gonna send you the link, Wilson, because I think for you, that would be a movie that I think you would really get into because I know you a little bit. So we're not going to do the film reviews. I can do the film reviews on my own. I want to wrap up. I want to thank you in this overtime edition. Wilson, thank you for staying here because I know you're dealing with some technical issues up there, but you hung with us, man, and did this. Charles Kirkland, it's always a pleasure. You know, I tease Wilson about his Moroccan curtain game, but you know, he's my dude. I'm riding for Wilson, man. I'm riding.
Hey.
You better not ever say nothing bad about Wilson Morales, so you're gonna give a cinematic fist in the face.
Say, hey, you know, I got
that young guy you talk about.
Yeah, Wilson always kills me. You know, I ain't been around as long as y'all. Wilson is about 3 years younger than I am. He's talking about he ain't
say,
been
I don't know
around
about that.
long.
Yo, I got that Benjamin Button look. You know what I'm saying? So like,
all right, Benjamin, man, we gonna go. Thank you guys for tuning in to Overtime. Happy birthday, Sir Sidney Poitier. You mean everything to. I'm not gonna say us. You mean everything to me. You know, I just posted online. Can I read my post real quick? Fellas?
It's your show, but hurry up.
let's make it quick. I gotta go.
All right. Happy birthday to the foundation, Sir Sidney Poitier, who turns 94 today. It's not an overestimation to say that his emergence in 1950 as Hollywood's first Black leading man in No Way Out literally changed the game. The biggest box office star in 1967, he redefined our image on the big screen and is also the first Black man to direct a $100 million movie. Thank you, Mr. Poitier, with eternal thanks and love. And on that note, I'm out, fellas. Until next week, I'll see you guys. You guys take care and enjoy your weekend.